This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000houses.com podcast. I'm here with Jerome Maldonado, and he's over out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I believe, but he's from San Antonio. He's got a unique concept. I haven't talked a lot about this, if ever, on my podcast. It's how to buy land and build on it. That has a big connotations because it's not just buy a lot and build a house. You can buy land and build anything. You can build apartment complexes or strip centers or whatever. So we're going to be talking to Jerome about that. Hey, Jerome, how you doing?
Mitch, I'm good, brother. How are you today? I love San Antonio. I love the backdrop of the San Antonio skyline behind you that most people wouldn't even recognize, but I can see the Space Needle behind you. I lived in San Antonio for a very long time, so I have a love and heart space for it.
Well, great. I always envied the people that started early, like you started really early, in your early 20s, you were out there swinging for the fence. You fell victim to some of the things that people who start being very successful at a young age fall victim to, the materialistic, like it's going to never end kind of thing. And then one day it does. And then everybody learns their lessons, right? So tell us a little bit about your beginnings and your peaks and valleys and where you are today.
So thank you, Mitch. So I'm a sales and business guy for just a young entrepreneur from heart in nature. I kind of matured into the real estate industry in the late 90s as a very novice investor, and then into the 2000s I started gaining some information and knowledge and wisdom. But I'm through and through, thick and thin. I'm an old school business guy, sales guy. I more consider myself an entrepreneur and business person than I do a real estate person, because I got started in direct sales and network marketing while I was in college, right? Living the dream, the storybook tale that our parents and everybody else teaches us, right? Go to school, get a good education. And in the midst of that, beginning of my fourth year in college, I found direct sales and network marketing. And I sucked at it, Mitch. I was horrible at it. 2.5 years, I was just dead awful at it. And I finally figured it out. Finally learned how to hit the nail on the head about 2.5 years in. And I became a top distributor in that company in the mid 90s. And lo and behold, we were published and got a lot of publicity in 95, 96. And all that publicity led to the FTC investigating, nitpicking how we did business, and shut us down in 1997, along with a lot of other companies. And so left me a young kid, like you said, making a ton of money, way too much in my 20s. We were doing about $25,000 net a month. And we were, I was buying cars, buying houses, and traveling the world. And it went to zero overnight. So we found ourselves victim of having nothing because we spent everything, no assets, right? And so my story kind of unfolds from there. I come home, finish my last year of college. And that's when I get into construction, is that year of college. What I never thought I'd be in is in construction. And through the means of default, I land up in construction. It becomes a very lucrative business, and it kind of leads me to where I'm at today.
Yeah. So you said a lot right there, but let's back up to the part. So because if you are a young man in your early 20s or late teens, and you're starting to have some success, or you're flipping some houses, please pay attention. I was telling Jerome earlier that it's almost in everybody's story who hit big success really young. It's almost inevitable that it's going to end with the same thing. And then I went out and bought boats and cars, and then I went broke, Rolex watches and all that stuff. So please, if you're younger, pay attention. He said at the end of that little travesty, he said, we didn't buy assets. Meaning he bought toys. And when the roller coaster ride went over, the toys don't produce any money. In fact, they cost you money generally, right? So remember, if you really want to be a smart guy and exceed your age with your actions, buy assets, buy things that make more than they cost every month when you're rolling in the dough. And then when it all goes to shit and that one thing that makes the money, the water spigot turns off and the money doesn't come anymore, you got these assets to show for it that should pull their own weight plus put money in your pocket. And that's the point I wanted to make before we go much further.
Yes.
Because I hear that story all the time. I didn't have that story, but I could have. I just never did get that successful young. So I wasn't allowed to make that mistake because I never made any money. I was barely just in my whole career, I never had any real windfalls. I just was making more this year than I was last year by a little bit. And I just kept going. And it's kind of a blessing in disguise because I never got rich beyond my comprehension. I knew what it took to make every dollar of it. And I valued it because I had to crawl on my hands and knees over every peak, not saying it's the best way, but that's how my way went. So what I think is neat is you started a construction company and then you kind of started taking control of your inventory. And this is why I like the way the entrepreneur thinks. He starts taking control of his downtime by buying lots and building things on it, buying land and building on it during the times when do I get this right? When it was slow, like November, December, January, whatever, you said that's when you could get a lot done. Were you working on your own projects during those months or?
Yeah. So what happened is I landed up getting my contractor's license in 1998 in lieu of helping my brother-in-law. Didn't know anything about construction, Mitch. I really didn't. I used to labor for those guys years prior, when in my early years of college, sanding drywall. So I landed up with a general contractor's license for both residential and commercial. And I started bidding drywall, metal stud framing and drywall projects. And I found out there was money in concrete work, decorative concrete specifically. So if those of you guys who walked into Rainforest cafes and seen all that beautiful decorative concrete work, or back before they renovated the New York, there used to be a ton of that stuff in New York. In fact, that's where I took seminars in Las Vegas. And I was building out decorative concrete and bidding this stuff on golf courses and stuff all over the country. And Mitch, what happened was, in the winter times, I actually just started buying assets because of what we talked about. Single family rental homes. I wanted something to show for my money. I started making good money again.
Nothing fancy, right? Not fancy.
Just little homes. In fact, they were junk, older homes that were probably built in the 60s, 70s. And they had some problems, warped out floors, big trees overgrown. The properties needed work. And we picked them up, chopped out a lot of bamboo and this, that, and the other, and we made them look pretty and we rented them. And I was forced to buy a construction yard. So in lieu of doing so, like I made mention to Mitch, when we were in network marketing, we were renting training centers. So distributors would rent desk space from us in the 90s. And this is where I learned a little bit about real estate, not knowing I was learning about real estate. Really, it was a humbling beginning. And I just kind of exercised my practical knowledge that I gained in direct sales from running training centers. I wasn't smart enough to figure out the network marketing game back in those days, but I was smart enough to figure out that if I could put some butts in chairs and charge them $500 for desk rent, I could pay my rent payment on the building. And so I did that in direct sales before I had success. And then I utilized that same concept with my construction company. We were forced to get a building. So I bought a retail center with the mindset that I would just get other people to pay for the building for me, Mitch. I thought, what the heck? Let me buy something bigger than I need. I'll rent out the space. I'll charge them rent and I'll be mortgage free. And so that's what I did. And it was a stupid, simple concept. Didn't know anything about real estate. And that's how I bought my first retail center. And it worked so well. I remember my dad coming down and looking and goes, well, what happens if he doesn't rent? And being the optimist that I am, I said, well, I never really thought about that, Dad. It's going to rent, right? I knew how to sell. I was going to get somebody to rent that place from me. If I could get people to buy water filters at a day and age and sell them desk space back in a day and age when there was only bottled water on the shelves for radiators and Evian, was the only bottled water, I think, in those days. I could get some people to lease a nicely remodeled building from me. And so I did. And the next year I bought another one. And Mitch, you're 100% right. You hit the nail on the head when you said, did I utilize this to keep my crews busy? I did. In the winter months, being in the Southwest, we're at high desert, we get a lot of snow. To keep my crews busy in the wintertime, I'd buy a building every year for 16 years and I would renovate it, either keep it or I would sell it in the spring. And I use those buildings and, to make money. I started buying land, building houses. 2004, started buying land and building retail centers, new construction. So we went through the whole process along the line, and that's what's helped us evolve to what we're doing today.
In all cases, I've had 3 buildings in my life because I don't really specialize in commercial buildings. I had 2 at one time. And then I said to myself, you either got to get 20 of these things or you got to get out of business, because you got to scale, right? You got to have economy of scale. You know, if you don't have an office over here for someone, when they call, then you say, you know, but I got one closer to you over there. Or you have to pick a business and then get up off the ground, way off the ground with it. And that business, you know, I might have, but I had such a good house flipping business and some other businesses that were already doing well that I thought, this is not my cup of tea. I'm building an office right now. We needed about 3,500 square feet. We went ahead and bought a building that we needed to remodel. It's about 6,000 square feet. And we're doing exactly the same thing. We're renting out exactly one half of it. We designed it that way, the one half that we're going to have, and then the one half we're going to lease. And we leased it out, and we actually get paid $3,000 a month to have our own office space and to rent out the other side. So I love that concept. You know, you don't need to pay for the building yourself. If you think just one step ahead, get some extra space, lease it out, and at least try to zero out on your space or cut your space down to where you're hardly paying anything for it, because you're charging for the other half of your building. So I also like the concept. You know, you have construction companies, and then the construction companies have to run to get work all the time. And then like in the winter months, it might slow down because depending on where you live, the snows and the rains and all that stuff, and it's hard to control. And so the idea of buying or developing your own property, always have one of your own properties on the side to develop. So if your crew is slow, they're still going to work today. They're just going to work back on that job, the one that's for me. You know what I mean? And I think that's brilliant, really, because your crews never sit on their ass and you never run out of time. And there's probably some tax moves to be made in there somewhere.
Yeah, there sure is. Yeah, there sure is. We especially on all the commercial stuff. You know, it's funny. I've been a little bit more hyper ambitious, Mitch, than most people. I've been driven by hard work my whole life, my parents and everything growing up, running a lot of land, animals and stuff as a kid. You kind of run that way, but I've been hyper ambitious, so it was one thing that led to another. We went in working for other people, found a means that I could buy a piece of land, build a house, make $100,000 every time I built a house. And it did so. And that actually held us together during the recession. That's what allowed us, when no one else was calling, we figured out a business model. Houses were still selling, Mitch. They just were selling different. But you guys don't know. You're in San Antonio. So Red McComb was still scraping land up in San Antonio and building houses during the recession. You didn't even know there was a recession, right? But buying land and building houses, the diversification of what we were doing was not something that I thought was going to be our saving grace by any stretch of the imagination. I did it to scale. I did it to make more money. I did it to evolve my businesses. I held on to everything that worked, right? So we opened up coffee shops, beauty salons. We were one of the largest Subway franchisees in the Southwest at one point in time. And everything that I didn't like and didn't make us the ROI that I loved, I just got rid of, right? If it was a lot of work and the return on investment was small, I got rid of it. If it was a lot of work, but it made us a good return, I kept it. And so as we evolved into a lot of uncharted territory, moving into the recession and stuff, a lot of our diversification, lo and behold, is what held us together. And as crazy as it seems, when the biggest housing market crisis was happening, it was our single family dwellings that we were building that kept us together. We just had to reposition our business model, and we continued profiting. We just sold the homes for less money, took a small margin cut, but we continued moving forward. So it's crazy how life evolves.
You kept your crews busy. You kept them moving. It's hard to put good crews together, right? I know from I'm rehabbing 4 houses every day of my life. And you got to keep those guys busy or they go away. And when you have a good one, you need to keep them.